to welcome you all, guests, students, faculty, staff, and all our AUC community members. I'd like to welcome you all on the first talk in the Office of Sustainability series of talks by experts in sustainability and sustainable development across all various expertise. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Sahar Al-Ghandour, Sustainability Manager at AUC Office of Sustainability. On behalf of the Office of Sustainability, I would like to be thankful to our esteemed expert speaker of today, Dr. Ihab Chalabi, for accepting our invitation. Thank you, Doctor. And welcoming his team members, Dr. Hisham Isa. Thank you, Doctor, for welcoming us. I will go quickly over a brief about Dr. Ihab Chalabi bio. Dr. Ihab Chalabi is the Chairman and CEO of Decarbon Egypt. He's a board member of Vodafone Foundation. He has more than 20 years of experience in the field of economics and sustainable development as a leading researcher, lecturer, and consultant. As a researcher, Dr. Ihab Chalabi has a number of papers published in renowned academic journals. As a lecturer, he teaches in a number of universities, among which is the Maastricht School of Management in Germany. As for being a consultant, Dr. Ihab Chalabi consultation experience spans from public to private sector. Regarding the public sector, Dr. Ihab Chalabi was one of the team members that participated in the preparation of Egypt's NDCs back to 2015, and in Egypt's Sustainable Development Strategy Vision for 2030. And in 2016, Dr. Ihab Chalabi has been part of the team of experts that participated in developing Egypt's voluntary national report on SDGs, which is known as VNR. And he was also one of the members of the experts team that participated in Egypt's national strategic revision on SDGs 1 and 2 for the World Food Programme. He was part of the team that developed Egypt's biennial updated report known as BUR on SDG 13 that was submitted to the UNFCCC. He used to be a member of the audit committee of Egypt's VNR, Voluntary National Review Report in 2018, and he was one of the members of the experts that revised Egypt's Vision 2030. Currently, Dr. Ihab Chalabi is working among a team of experts in developing Egypt's first carbon market study and Egypt's low-emission carbon strategy. Regarding his private sector consultation, Dr. Ihab has participated in developing sustainable institutional framework for different sectors in the private scope. For example, banking, telecom, FMCGs, ICT, oil and gas, among other sectors. Thank you, Dr. Chalabi, for giving us this opportunity to learn from your wide experience. But before starting by Dr. Ihab Chalabi talk, I'd like to introduce Engineer Yasmin Mansour, Sustainability Director at AUC Office of Sustainability, to leave the floor for her to give a quick overview about sustainability at AUC in general. And I would like to draw your attention all that there will be a time slot for Q's and A's at the end among Dr. Chalabi and Yasmin Mansour. So just prepare your questions before you leave. Thank you all and wish you all an insightful event. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Sahar, for presenting the talk, and thank you for presenting me. Thank you, Dr. Ihab, for giving us a time and to come and talk and have this event happen. Besides, I would like to thank and appreciate the VP Shireen Shaker for the continuous support that she's always giving to that office. Let me start my talk today by emphasizing that this year is unlike any other year because it's the year of COP27 that Egypt will host in November 2022 in Sharm el-Sheikh. Hence, this is the time that now for everyone to take the responsibility, starting from us as individuals, communities, institutional level, to the country and the regional level, and of course, to the whole globe. This year in Egypt, COP27 will continue the important work in the field against climate change, mobilizing the world's leaders once more towards climate action. The ultimate goal of COP27 this year is implementation, so it's called the Year of Action. Aligning with AUC Climate Change Initiative and as a signatory to the Global Race to Zero campaign, the Office of Sustainability is building upon its long history in the field by hosting a series of expert talks, responsive campaigns, and events, an effort to raise the awareness of AUC community members towards climate change topics and issues for their individual actions that aggregate and accumulate for the benefit of the community and hence the country. AUC is committed to using our intellectual and creative capabilities to serve our communities, have a positive and sustainable impact on the environment, and address challenging confronting Egypt, the region, and the world. As we work to implement sustainable development on our own campus, we aim to continuing AUC role as a leader in sustainability and inspire positive change in Egypt and the region. The Office of Sustainability was established in 2011. Since then, it has been responsible for addressing AUC's environmental challenges, including climate change, resource scarcity, pollution, waste management. We are responsible for the global rankings of a sustainable operation. The office is publishing a comprehensive carbon footprint report and a biennial carbon footprint report. Our objective is to integrate environmental, social, and economic aspects of the sustainability into the university culture, structure, and in activities. Our main strategic goals are expanding global recognition, improve our carbon trends reductions, and enhance our social responsibility and foster sustainable resource management. Now, please let me give the floor to Dr. Ihab Shalabi, our esteemed speaker, and I hope for you to have an informative talk and discussion. Thank you.
ممكن حد يكومينيكيت بس كده the mic is working. It's okay. It's working. طبعا thank you so much. طبعا it's an honor to be here among faculty professors. Thank you so much for having me here, and it's also a pleasure to be among students. In fact, I started my career as a faculty member, and I stayed there on a constant basis for more than 15 years or something, after which I discovered that I need to get out a little bit and to return, and currently I'm teaching at the Maastricht University MBA program across different regions. Again, thank you so much for having me today to share some of my insights and knowledge. And before starting our presentation today, I'd like to also thank the Carbon team who came with me, Dr. Hisham Isa, who is our godfather. He is the former UNFCCC focal point in Egypt, and one of the persons who co-wrote one of the most important articles into Paris Agreement, Article 6, on the carbon market. This is on one hand. On the second hand, I'd like also to welcome your alumni, 3 of your students who are been working with Decarbon, Mahmoud, Dua, and Jumana. And the 3 of them is from the School of Public Policy, or School of Political Science. I'm very happy in Homabad, 2 or 3 years of work. Now they are back to their home and allow us, and Mahmoud is going to present his work for you and who is the clients he is consulting and on what level. Thank you so much for having me today, and it's really an honor and a pleasure. Part of what I'm going to talk about today is the sustainability career, and it's one of the most difficult career to work on due to a number of factors. I started this career by my PhD from the Faculty of Economics and Political Science and the Free University of Berlin. I worked as a researcher afterwards in the Free University of Berlin for a number of years, working on under the supervision of the lead authors of Germany Sustainable Development Strategy in 2010. After that, I worked as a researcher for the Free University of Berlin, and afterwards as an advisor in the European Commission in the expert advisory group who was responsible for developing the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership Program at that time. And all of this started by scholarship that I received from the DAAD, the German Academic Exchange Service. So I have this theoretical background about the topic and the policy background from a global and regional perspective. Then I came to Egypt. I joined as an expert the Ministry of Planning in developing Egypt's first Sustainable Development Strategy, 2015. And this gave me a lot of policy architecture in Egypt and how it works and what are the challenges and so on. After that, the United Nations asked me to join in writing the first sustainability report for the Egyptian government. And I then worked on different SDGs with different studies across different international organizations. So from this period, I also have a policy architecture, or I have an understanding, a good understanding of the policy architecture globally, regionally, and then it was acquainted by it nationally. At this point, I discovered that I need to go into implementation. And to go into implementation, I will need to address the business sector. In 2016, I established Decarbon. And Decarbon is a company that segmented the Egyptian market into 10 major sectors. And we are working with the leaders of each sector in order to help them into their sustainability journey, into their transition journey. So our experience on ground started by the banking sector. We are consulting the biggest 10 banks in Egypt and currently in United Arab Emirates and Kuwait. We moved to telecom and then to oil and gas, then to the road took us, and the recent sectors we established are two major sectors, which are real estate sector and the construction sector. And by the construction sector, I mean the whole built environment, all of the construction material. And in this regard, we are consulting a number of multilateral development banks and national institutions. With this experience, what I want to put as a first message is that sustainability is a multi-dimensional and interdisciplinary concept. Skills are not enough. You need knowledge, and you need to work together. This file needs a global understanding, a regional understanding, a national understanding, a sectoral understanding. And accordingly, this file will not be achieved alone. Either you are a person, you are an organization, you are a country, or you are whatever. It needs not only multidisciplinary background, but also interdisciplinary research and research methodologies. This is something that is very important for anybody who wants to work in this career. From this experience, we established, as I mentioned, Decarbon, and we reflected this in Decarbon. So we are a team of experts, majorly 5 experts with different backgrounds. My background is sustainability. Dr. Ahmed Bilal is a macroeconomist and modeler. Dr. Hisham Isa is with a political background as a UNFCCC member and as a Ministry of Environment expert. Dr. Nasser Ayub is the head of the International Life Cycle Assessment Steering Committee, the Environmental Product Declaration Committee, and Maya Alwani, who is a lead strategist who is working with us. As you can see, you need diverse backgrounds in order to work on this file. You need everybody on these grounds. To set the floor, one of the major challenges that I'm always facing, that everybody is talking about sustainability as a megatrend. How can we see it as a megatrend? When I was doing my PhD in 2008, I discovered that I Googled sustainability. In 2008, I discovered that the hits that came back was 5,000 hits. A year ago, every year now, I'm taking a screenshot. 1 year ago, it was 1 billion. Just yesterday, before coming here, it is becoming 1,700,000,000, and this number increased to 200 billion, to 2,100,000,000. And just to compare it with the most searched item on the internet, which is the word ICT, the word ICT returned only something like less than 1 billion. What does this reflect? Is that sustainability is really a mega trend, and it's expanding tremendously as we speak. This is very important to show how the concept is a mega trend concept. طيب. Let's establish. نعم. ممكن استخدم ده احسن؟ ده احسن كده؟ شكرا. شكرا لك جدا. طيب, let's start by something to agree on. All of us. We have a problem here. And what is the problem? The problem is that when we will say sustainability, everybody will have different background about sustainability. So what I would like to set in the first 10 minutes is to unify our approach towards sustainability in order to be able to sail with the boat. This is something that caused a lot of trouble. The designer working in my company, after hearing about sustainability so much, I found him doing these posters. And I found it circulating like hell on the internet. Why this is so? Because it was true. Everybody is talking about sustainability, but nobody, or there is no common or general understanding, or background narrative, common narrative where we can agree or even disagree on. So this is what we want to spend the first 10 minutes in, building the narrative together. If I said the word black, okay, and I would like to ask حضرتك, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when we say black? First thing, whatever it is. Opposite to white, doctor? Black. Aza, okay. Jumana, black. Color. Black. Color. Black. Racism. Okay. As you said, every one of us is putting his own understanding to a color. That is a color, so when I run these tests across my different classes across the world, most of my classes in Europe returns the following terms: elegance, night, romance. When I run the similar term in the Middle East, most of the answers it hits back is funerals, death, despite that it's a color. So, therefore, we are putting our own epistemology on something as simple as a color. So accordingly, what we want to do now is to understand how to work on a similar concept, sustainability. Sustainability is very similar. It means different things to different people across different departments in different countries. For engineers, sustainability brings the notions of energy efficiency, green buildings, renewable energy, technology, innovation. So, for economists, it brings totally different concepts. For social scientists, it's totally different. Can you imagine that we want to put on the same table politicians, economists, business people, everyone with different backgrounds, talking together and reaching a conclusion? This is what is important if you want to succeed in the field. And to do so, you have to understand where each and every one come from and how he sees the concepts and how can you moderate the concepts among everybody. Let's structure a narrative. As we mentioned, for 10 minutes, I want to develop a common narrative. This is my narrative. And my second recommendation for everybody of you, you have to develop your own narrative. And you have to continue working on developing a narrative. Don't work in energy efficiency in your building without having a narrative for the carbon footprint or for the climate strategy for the AOC. First, construct a narrative, your own narrative. Develop your own narrative. Learn, and then insert or inject the skill or the tool you want to utilize inside this narrative. This is the social scientist narrative I'm going to present. How sustainability started? This is what you have taught us at the American University in Cairo. During the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, economists told us one thing, which is this is the success factors. On the economic level, we want GDP growth rates. And on the corporate level, we want to maximize the shareholder value. These are the two most important and single key performance indicators that you put forefront and center for us. How this is achieved? Anybody with economic background here? Okay. This is achieved through the following. Disposable income, sorry. Okay. Here is the income that we receive. Disposable income means income after taxation. The income we receive goes to our households. When it goes to our household, we do one of two things. We either save or consume. The savings that goes to the financial system are channeled to investors. And the rest of the money with the consumer, we go to consume and purchase things with. So the aggregate demand in the economy is C plus I. This is the total demand. Investor who wants machine and the consumer who wants to eat. Then the government intervene, and also the government has demands to put on the table. And then the rest of the world in a relation of import and exports. This is called the total aggregate demand. This is the aggregate demand of Egypt. C plus I plus G plus X minus IM. For this aggregate demand to be satisfied, firms interfere, including the AUC. The AUC is here to satisfy the demand. The demand of whom? Consumers or producers? The demand of consumers who are demanding education. مش كده؟ you interfere, the production function interfere, and then the firms produces what consumers want, and then we have the gross national income. We take the money and we disseminate the money among the four factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. After, and this is called the national income. After the government takes its taxes, then we return back with the new kind of income. This circle starts by 1,000 and it ends by 1,200. Therefore, GDP growth rate is 20%. This is what we have been taught at the economic school in the AUC and across different schools in the world, and for a long period of time. How? On the macro level, we need to achieve economic growth, and the KPI بتاعنا is called gross domestic product. And on the corporate level, it's called shareholder value, and its KPI is called profitability, return on asset, return on investment, or whatever. طيب. Have we succeeded in what we have been taught? Yes. We established two major frameworks to measure our success. One is called the IFRS, and the other is called the GAAP, American framework and the British framework to measure profitability. So we have now a clear objective. We want profitability. We have a clear KPI that is called profitability, and we have a framework that through which we can all measure profitability. طيب. What happened? In fact, we succeeded. We succeeded in what you taught us. We succeeded as the world showed the highest level of growth rates starting from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We did it. What you taught us, we excelled in, and we did it. And we structured all our business model across all of our productions, including the AUC, including universities, with one major objective in mind, which is profitability. Suddenly, the world GDP increased tremendously. Currently, we are enjoying 86 trillion world economy. So, in fact, we succeeded. We succeeded globally. But the problem lies in the word we. Yes, we all made more profits, and we all made more growth rates. But the society does not compose of we. The society is composed of individuals, single individuals. And a problem clearly were identified in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, that we have a great disparity in the distribution of income, a huge disparity in the distribution of income. So the society does not compose of number of individuals or sum of individuals. It is our average individual. The society is composed of real individuals. When we discovered this problem, which is mainly saying that together we are better, but on individual basis, we are not better, we started developing a new indicator that is called the Gini indicator. What is Gini indicator? Gini indicator is an indicator that is measuring the wealth distribution. This is Egypt, as per 2020. 1% of the Egyptian population enjoys 20% of the national income. 50% of the Egyptian population enjoys the same amount, less than 20%, and 10% of the Egyptian population is enjoying nearly 50% of the national income. This reflects that despite GDP growth rates in Egypt were high, but the major problem is that the distribution was not equal. Therefore, despite that we have a real economic prosperity, this prosperity was not reflected in the lives of the people. It was on paper. This pushed a lot of economists and a lot of social scientists to develop a new indicator that is called the Human Development Indicator. It doesn't take into account only the level of GDP or GNI. It takes also into account the level of knowledge of the society. And it takes also into account the long and healthy lives of the people as social dimensions that reflects the happiness of the people. Another indices that has been captured or developed was the happiness index. Are we happy? If everything we are doing for the sake of being happy. Yes, we grew in terms of GDP, but are we really happier now? And therefore, a number of new reports started showing off, challenging the GDP notion as the only measure of success. We have different other measures of success that needs to be taken into consideration. What is causing this huge disparity? What is causing this problem and this huge disparity? One of the major problems that is causing the huge disparity is the corruption. Corruption is what is causing a lot of developing countries, this disparity. And unfortunately, corruption across our region is among the highest. If you can see Saudi Arabia, if you can see Egypt, Israel, even Israel and Qatar is in a better situation. Therefore, the economic dimension is no more enough to talk about sustainability, but the social dimension is also an important factor. And this is a very important notion by a very important book that has been taught for years in the AUC. In chapter 12 of the book, which is Public Finance in Theory and Practice, Richard Muzarev. Anybody studied this book here? Okay. School of Economics definitely, and Public Finance definitely studied this book. Muzarev, a Nobel Prize economist, said it clearly. Economics has nothing to do with fairness. Economics has only to do with efficiency. We steer shy when it comes to economics helps to determine what constitutes an efficient use of resource based on a given pattern of distribution. But there is a further question of what constitutes a fair or just state of distribution. And in this context, modern economic analysis steers shy in front of this problem. Therefore, despite that we have been for long talking about the economic dimension of development, now there is a new dimension that is coming that is related to the social dimension of development that needs to be taken care of and to be part of what we are seeking. Next is, we have a very quick look at the economic dimension. But in fact, the economic dimension does not constitute more than 1% of the story. Why? Because end of the story, we are depending on resources. And unfortunately, we are not respecting the planet that is bringing us these resources. We are throwing it into low-grade A wastes. Can you imagine that we have been focusing on a very small part of the story, putting all of our efforts in and all our knowledge in, and when we just expanded the picture, we found that this part of the story does not constitute more than 1% of the reality. And most of the reality is that we are depleting our resources and we are throwing back wastes in the environment. Therefore, from the economic dimension, there was a social dimension that was born, after which an environmental critique was also born. This environmental critique, and just to reflect you, Egypt, economists with the social dimension and with the environmental dimension, economists found themselves cornered. GDP is no more a good measure of wealth and well-being. So they designed, in coordination with the World Bank, a new indicator that is called adjusted net saving. And this is something that is very important in the context of the AUC, okay? And in the context of education, and I will show you why now. What is adjusted net saving? We are trying to add to the economic component, social component, and environmental components. Type. What we did here is the following. This is the economic part, but we will add plus human capital, okay? And we will deduct damages from a pollution. And we will deduct value of resources depletion. If the AUC want to construct its narrative here, this is a very important model to be working on. لأنه this model is a model that can say at the end if the overall value of the contribution of the AUC is positive or negative. The AUC deplete resources, بس هي كمان invest in human capital, صح؟ وكمان هي عندها environmental damages. Quantifying of these three variables and adding them to the economic outcome of the AUC can show whether it's having a positive value or negative value. But let's test this on Egypt. When we tested this model on Egypt, we discovered the following. Egypt is doing very well in terms of the traditional gross national savings. We are saving 18% year over a year. This was the year of the revolution, by the way. Type. The problem was that when we calculated the net savings, it turns out to be 6%. But when we added educational expenditure, it reached 11%. When we deducted oil and gas depletion in Egypt, minus 7%, and when we deducted environmental degradation, which was equivalent to 1%, we reached an adjusted net saving of 3%. Is this 3% good or bad? This is the comparison across the region. This is the world. We are doing as the least, or the second least after mean, Middle East and North Africa. Can anybody here tell us why Middle East and North Africa is doing worse than Egypt? Because they are resource-based countries. They are living on depleting their resources. So the adjusted net saving model captured this in the model and was able to reflect it. Type. A very peculiar thing when it comes to education. When I worked with this model with the World Bank, the lead economist told me, Ihab, I have a question and we need to do an investigation here. I told him, what is this question? Ali, you added investment in education by positive sign. Told him, yes. Investment in education, as the model is saying, should be added as a positive sign. So, Ali type, please. Net national saving. This is the net saving, and then we add education. When we added education, it turns as positive. Ali, you added it as a positive sign? I told him yes. And he told me, I want you to do an exercise for me before we decide whether we will add a positive or not. And what was the exercise? The exercise that he asked me about the level of employment per level of education. Yes. So the illiterates' unemployment rate is 2.4%. The read and write until technical intermediate and university and above. Unemployment rate among PhD holders is كم في المية? 40%. What does this mean? This means that education in Egypt is not an investment, but rather consumption. And therefore, it should be entered in the value of the formula by a negative sign. While I was very happy with these results, and then a colleague came to me and told me, yes, Ihab, أصل انتوا بتتجوزوا بالشهادة وبتشتغلوا بالحب. Simply on ground reality that showed me, after being very happy, it depressed me. If it's so obvious, so we need to do all this research. What I want to say here is, when the American university is checking on its alumni and the employment and unemployment rate among them, it's in fact not only showing its something that is related to the status of the AUC, but rather whether it is really considering the family's money as investments or consumption. Quest? And this is something that needs to be measured from my perspective very closely. Type. Now, to sum it up, we have an economic dimension. Now economists are pressured by sociologists. And now also economists are pressured by environmentalists. Quest? Type. But the pressures now is becoming high and above. Why? Can you imagine that I was born in 1975, okay? The history of human population, until my birth was 4 billion. And only in my age, we doubled. Yani only in the last 45 years, we doubled. Can you imagine the pressures that are put on the resources of the planet? In the last 40 years, we have total population has reached 8+ billion. And by the way, the maximum amount of the total population expectations, according to the UN Statistical Office, will reach 11 billion by 2100. So from 8 to 12 to 11, we will increase by 3 billion. Do you know where the 3 billion will increase? 2 in Africa and 1 in Asia. 2 billion in Africa and 1 billion in Asia. And that's why Africa is becoming very important for everybody, because it has the resources and it has the markets. Okay. I have designed you a slide that carries all the history I talked about until today. If anybody wants supporting literature, supporting resources, that makes the shifts between, that started from GDP, moving to a social dimension, moving to an economic dimension, moving to, until we reach sustainability, you can find it in this slide, and this slide was designed in accordance to Todaro. Type. This is the summation of the first part. Now, we started with economic development in the 60s and the 70s as the major pillar. Then in the 80s, the social part of the story took place. And finally, we have now the environmental pillar taking up. It's clear, economic pillar is not alone enough, social pillar is not alone enough, environmental pillar is not alone enough. We need a global comprehensive strategy. And this is what took place in policy architecture. Time. Before going in, or diving in, anybody saw this movie? Okay. Please have a look on this movie, because all of what I'm going to say is subject to understanding this movie afterwards, okay? This is simply when we are going to talk about sustainability and climate change, this is simply what is happening. It's a war between different minds, politicians, businessmen, and scientists. This is the struggle that we are going to talk about now. Type. In this context, let's start دلوقتي. خلاص, the world is now aware that we have an economic problem, a social problem, an environmental problem. Okay, we know that there is a problem. Let's put a strategy. In terms of policy architecture, we have two strategies that are working parallel to each other. The first strategy was called the Sustainable Development Strategy that was developed in 2015. And this strategy is composed of 17 goals. These 17 goals are backed up by 169 targets, and the targets are backed up by 233 key performance indicators. So we have a strategy with targets and key performance indicator. On the other hand, and beside this strategy, goal 13 alone has been segregated. And it's only talking about climate action. Uh, a very brief history about this can be found here on sustainability, on transforming the world, the Brundtland Report, and a very brief, in the past we have, before promulgating the SDGs, we have something called the MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, that is more of social goals, while the Sustainable Development Goals is more of a combination of a social, economic, and environmental goals. For example, from 1 to 6 are all social. From 7 to 12 are all economic. 13, 14, and 15 are all environmental. And then 16 and 17 are more of tools rather than goals. Okay. Moving, and this is something Dr. Hisham will talk about, here is the history of the political architecture of climate change. Quite. 3 milestones. The first milestone on climate change was related to the Rio Summit, which is the Constitution. The second point was the Kyoto Protocol, which enforced the developed countries to reduce their emissions. And the final milestone was the Paris Agreement that is enforcing now the whole world to reduce its emissions. طيب. يبقى أنا عندي 2 tracks of policy architecture. The first track is the Paris Agreement, or the Sustainable Development Goals, and the second track is the Paris Agreement. Okay. Now we have a vision, a very clear vision. يبقى what we do after having a vision is that we need a strategy to implement the vision. صح? This is where you will need to go to the, we have now across the past went to the economic school, went to the sociology school, and then we went to the environmental school, and now we have to go to the strategic management school. In order to implement something, we have to understand strategic management. So accordingly, leadership will put the vision on the global and country level. Then we will go to planning, implementation, monitoring, learning, and adaptation. And here I will stop to reflect you something very peculiar about Egypt, either on the country level or on even the business level. Very peculiar. When I worked on this file across different institutions globally, in Dayman, I found this. When the leadership have a vision, when we go to planning, I discovered that planning does not achieve the 100%. It goes down to 60%. When we go to implementation, it goes down to 30%. And this is captured across monitoring and reporting. But in Germany, when we only achieve 30%, the next year we go to the leadership and tell him we only achieved 30%. مش بنقدم له تقرير إنجازات يعني. كويس? And we have this type of problems. So the next year, the 30% becomes 40 and 70 and 80 and 100. In Egypt, in the first round, we achieved better than the Germans. We achieved 60%. But we go and say, كله تمام يا ريس. We have no problems. We are okay. We are beautiful. So it turns that without monitoring, and we don't learn. And accordingly, we are like a hamster. And that's why having a sustainability report and having a carbon footprint report is something that is not a report, it's a tool for learning and development. It's not something nice to have on shelf. It's something that helps us to learn, to develop, to understand. And whenever we read reports, and I will show you Egypt report now, whenever we read these reports as experts from the first sight, we can capture whether it's transparent report or not, and whether the report has a best practice that we can feature or not. Type. What we do about Egypt? Let's see how Egypt did. This is the global reports. Every year, we have a climate change report globally, and we have a sustainability report globally. Egypt بقى. Reflecting كل دوت from this is the global architecture. We have a sustainable development strategy, we have a climate change strategy, and we are doing global sustainability reports. What did Egypt do بقى? Where is Egypt from this architecture? Here is Egypt. Egypt has the only constitution in the world that mentions the word sustainable development 3 times. Economic, social, and environmental. It's the only. Because it was written in the same time with the sustainable development goals. Egypt has the only constitution in the world that has key performance indicators related to sustainability. Okay? So this is a piece that we should be proud of. Type. After we have the constitution, how we will implement this high-level leadership vision, we need a strategy. Egypt has a strategy called 2030 that is composed of these 8 goals: economic, environmental, and social, and they are currently, this has been delivered to the Ministry of Planning last year, and it's currently under development due to the war on Ukraine. And this is the sustainability track. On the climate change track this year, and because that we are presiding the COP, we developed a climate change strategy, and we developed a very important document that will impact each and every one of us. National Updated Determined Contribution. What is determined contribution? This is the document where Egypt put targets on itself to reduce GHG emissions across 3 major sectors: oil and gas, energy, and transportation. Energy and transportation, okay? طيب. خلاص, we have strategies. How we will implement? Implementation بقى is the biggest problem. Why? It needs a lot of coordination. Therefore, we have to have a whole government approach. If one ministry worked together, no way any ministry will achieve. And this came to us like a striking heart in the chest, because we have this problem clear, forefront and center for all of the Egyptian ministries. They need to work together. They have to work together. And no way they will succeed without working together. Type. We now have a strategy, and we now have a government that is working on achieving its goals. We need to monitor and report. So we developed 3 reports now. There is the 3rd report now. We developed national review report, voluntary national review. This is the sustainability report. I had the honor to write the first one in 2016, and the second one was promulgated by the Ministry of Planning. And these reports are monitoring the status of how many goals? 17 Sustainable Development Goals. How Egypt is doing in each and every goal. Type. I have a question here. I put the strategy, and I do the report. Definitely I will praise myself. صح? And that's why the United Nations, and this is a very important dashboard for everybody, and it's across the 196 countries, the United Nations do an annual review, and I have been part of this committee in 2018, do an annual independent review on the status of each country across the goals. Something very peculiar about this report. Egypt overall rank is الدولة رقم كام؟ 83. صح? It scored 68. These are 2 very low numbers. But there is a very important number that Egypt is the number 1 approximately in the world in, which is the spillover effect. What is this number? What is this spillover effect? Spillover effect means that when Egypt succeeds in achieving any increase or decrease in any goal, its impact on the region and globally is 100%. This means that for example, somebody like the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, or the International Financial Corporation, when you talk with them and you find them telling you, we are coming to invest in Egypt. No. Investing in Egypt in SDGs is really investing in the world. Because the spillover effect, can you imagine that a country like United Arab Emirates scores here 60? The maximum other countries on 32, 33, and 34. What I want to say here is, Egypt is literally a very powerful regional actor and player that we cannot secure its failure at any of these type. This is the status, and this is how we are progressing positively or negatively on achieving each of these goals. Right. Moving from sustainability to climate change. Egypt is emitting 325 tons of GHG emissions annually. This 325 tons constitute 0.6% of the global emissions. Our contribution to the global emission is 0.6%. Let's have an argument together. Whenever the world is talking with us, the answer from our side is mitigation. What kind of mitigation are you talking about? The states, the United States itself didn't host the COP before. China didn't host the COP before. 25% and 25% of global emissions. You want us to mitigate the 0.6%? This is a very clear and nice argument. But with a comma, it becomes an invalid argument. Yes, Egypt's contribution to GHG emissions is 0.6%. But the growth rate in the contribution of GHG emission is the highest in the world because it is correlated to two factors: population growth rates and GDP growth rates. With these two factors, the growth rate of GHG emission in Egypt is higher than the growth rate of GHG emissions in the States. Please, you have a question? Yes, directly now. This is the translation. This is the amount of emissions by sector. Okay? The energy sector is responsible for how many percent? 64%. This needs to do a comparative study with the AOC, with the carbon footprint of the AOC. 64% comes out of energy, IPPU, industrial process, AFLU, and agriculture and waste. This is our composition. Okay? Type. In this respect, the emission per category of energy sector, for the energy sector, what is the most industry that is polluting? It is the energy industries. Okay? Type. Nice information about different sectors. Can you see the cement production, for example? This is the cement production emission percentage of GHG emissions. You have a question? Yes. Why? Yes, please.
Of Egypt thinking in the way of like, oh, why should we invest so much to help others get better? Like, rather than, that you should give us money or you should give us more incentives for it.
Very nice. Yes, I agree with the argument. This is part of the arguments of the Egyptians. Yes, exactly. Okay, but they have the right why. Our contribution is 0.6%. Okay, where are you from originally? Germany. Okay,
yeah.
so Germany, and this is a very nice example. I will go into it, jumping out to it, and then I will come back. One of the major questions I'm receiving nowadays from many investors, particularly Gulf investors in Egypt, they are asking me, Ihab, do you still believe in this ESG and sustainability? And then I reply to them, and why you are saying so? And then they are replying to me, Germany has returned to coal. Okay. I think Germany needs to clarify that this is a tactic and not a change in the strategy. Because as much as Germany returned to coal, but Germany is now attacking the demand side of the story, which is the built material and the construction sector. So we are moving now from the supply side to the demand side, something I can expand with you later on in the presentation. Type. So we have now architecture type. Appreciate, this is the most important slide on the national level. This slide is not an outcome of only a back-end research, but is also an outcome of my understanding and working with the national government. This is how the Egyptian government is thinking. One, what are the leading sectors in socio-economic developments? What are the leading sectors in what? Socio-economic development. We run a study and we discover that we have 6 sectors. These 6 sectors are leading socio-economic development in Egypt. Okay? Type. Why they are leading? Because they have contribution to GDP, contribution to investments, contribution to employment, and the number of workers. These are, if Egypt wants to develop, it needs to focus on this sector. Let's take the real estate and construction sector. The real estate and construction sector contribution to GDP growth rate, 6%. Can you see its contribution to employment? It's the second largest. Can you see its contribution to investment? It's the first largest. خلاص؟ فEgypt will always think socio-economic development. This is the real position of the Egyptian government. But the problem is that these sectors also are contributing to they are contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. صح كده؟ These sectors are very important to economic development, but كمان they are contributing to greenhouse gas, which is important for the Egyptian government. Socio-economic development. يبقى we have to find a solution. What is this solution? This solution is decoupling. Decoupling economic growth of the sector from the GHG emissions. To decouple economic growth from the GHG emissions, we have to return back to these six sectors, and we do something called greening the construction sector, greening the energy sector, greening all kinds of sectors that contribute to socio-economic development. And for greening these sectors, what we need is finance. And this will be one of the major topics that will be addressed this year in COP27, finance. I need to have your question before moving to the corporate level. So we have now a global level and the national level who are talking two different languages. Please, آخر الأستاذة في بعد كده after this يا جماعة for questions you can take the questions and we'll have it مع بعض. اتفضلي.
So regarding the previous slide, wouldn't it help in the decoupling if they just try to switch to more tertiary sector businesses to help grow like the GDP rather than being in the manufacturing side? Wouldn't that help with the emissions?
Again, please the question, I'm sorry.
Okay.
What other sectors you're talking about? What the other sectors?
So if we decouple them, can't we just like try to transform on the long run to more tertiary sector activities so that like they contribute more to the GDP whilst also like decreasing emissions rather than choosing like manufacturing
Excellent
sectors?
questions. Excellent questions. And this is a matter of a big debate. Have you heard about green hydrogen, for example? Okay. Now everybody, even the Egyptian Ministry of Electricity, is talking about green A. For me, talking about green hydrogen now is some of escaping forward of the problem. The sectors you are talking about, other sectors that can contribute to the GDP growth rate, could be good sectors. But we are talking about a time span of medium to long term. Definitely those should be on our radar. But we should first start with what? With what we have in hand. Currently, these sectors are contributing to Egypt's socio-economic development. I cannot disregard them. يعني مثلا, for example, tell you something. We have a very big fight with one of the ministries telling us, I don't want the cement producer in COP27. And my question was, why? Because they are polluters. And I told her, yes, therefore they must be the first in COP27. Otherwise, we are leaving the main polluters We are leaving the main polluters outside the picture. Leaving no one behind is very important. In fact, or in particular, cement producers should be encouraged, and we should facilitate their work. طيب. Now moving to the hard part of the story. This is a global architecture that is moving, tackling climate change and sustainability. And we have now a national level, governments, ministries, policies. This was the first 8 years of my life. When I took this with me and went to corporates, I want now you to feel with me and to sense with me what happened. When I went to corporates telling them sustainability and climate change, the answer was that, sorry, we don't understand what you're talking about. This is not what we have been taught in our universities. You yourself didn't taught us this. So, even in our universities or in our MBA programs. In all kinds of schools. We have been taught one thing. Shareholder value. We want to maximize the shareholder value. We want profits. We structured all our models internally to achieve profits. We cannot disturb these models now. We don't have this luxury now. Type. And you want us now to take care of all stakeholders and not only shareholders? You want us to take care of the environment, the employees, the supply chain, the local authorities, the local communities? We are sorry. This is not what we were built for. We will build for making a profit. And then I had to I have to take off my hat talking about sustainability and climate change, and then to wear their hat and to see what could be the real motivations. These are the most important 8 real motivations that may motivate them to join the file. And I would like to ask a question after talking about them. Number 1, investments. You will not be invested in unless you comply with the ESG requirements. Second, you will not be eligible for borrowing, or you will be having loans and facilities with lower rates if you complied with economic, social, and environmental variables. 3, rating and ranking. You will have bad reputation, lower ratings and ranking as a corporate globally, if not. Leadership. Sometimes leadership, visionary leadership, sees this very clearly. Operating costs, which we were talking about in the morning. You will reduce your operating costs because it's efficiency, energy efficiency, for example. Compliance. صح? طيب. And the final one is ESG risks. And I'm going to talk about everyone because everyone is the real consultations we are delivering to companies. My first question. In Egypt, what is the first motivation for companies from your perspectives? What are the major motivation that motivated companies to join the sustainability movement and climate change? The operating costs, the same argument. So operating costs, license, investments, borrowing, yes. Repetition. Change to borrowing. Okay. Excellent. Until 2020, it was leadership. It was visionary leaders of big banks and corporates who did the file and who joined the file without any other motivation. And because they are visionary leaders, what happened afterwards, when the file becomes compulsory, they are sitting and saying that we are okay. While all others are struggling right now. All other companies are struggling in Egypt right now. Leadership was the major motivating issue behind joining this file before the movement. Type. Let's have a quick look about the first issue. These are the rating agencies in the world. We are dealing with these rating agencies. All corporates are assessed according to these frameworks, and then we transfer them to frameworks by reports to media agencies, and then media agencies take this report and transfer it to research agencies, rating agencies. The repetition is very important. This is an example of a ranking of the 4 universities globally. Okay, I think the AUC is ranked there. Okay, this is the Egyptian ranking. Type. The afterwards, how much money, according to Sustainable Investment Alliance, how much money exists globally for ESG? 31 trillion. This 31 trillion constitutes 40% of the global GDP. And the problem, not the problem, the good news is that it's not only a high figure, but also it is increasing annually on an average rate of 16%. This means that by 2030, all the money that will be existing globally will be associated with ESG investments. I must comply with all ESG criteria. Type. Borrowing. This is the bond market and the growth rates in the bond markets globally, green bonds. It's also growing very high. Egypt promulgated 2 bonds. The Ministry of Finance promulgated a green bond that is worth of $750 million US, and the Ministry of... A final piece that is very important was a resilience test during COVID. This is the red line represents the investments, traditional investments. The green line represents the ESG investments. What happened during COVID? Here is COVID. What happened during COVID is that ESG investments stayed on the rise, while traditional investments get A. What does this mean? This means that ESG investment is more resilient and you can capitalize it more than traditional investments. These are case studies. CIB is a forefront runner with $100 million US dollar green bond, Ministry of Finance also. Another case study is Qatar National Bank. Another case study is Bank Al Ahli Al Masri, and Bank Dukair joined recently. And this is the amount of opportunities that is existing globally if we are talking about opportunities across different sectors. This is a recent loan that has been promulgated by Magid Al Futtaim for LEED green buildings. All of his malls in Egypt and across the region are LEED certified, and accordingly he was eligible for 1.5 billion dirhams loan with a very highly discounted interest rates. Simply, we are under, all firms are, now firms find itself under attack of everybody. You will not be able to export without being compliant. You will not be invested. You will not be lend, consumers, and so on. And then all my clients ask me the nice question. How? Khalas, we are convinced. How? But before how, there are 3 decisions that are very important to know about. Just last year, the Central Bank of Egypt promulgated a decision, a circular, on all banks to establish sustainable finance departments. A second decision is called Decision 107 by the Financial Regulatory Authority that is obliging all listed companies to comply with the ESG criteria and report on. And the third decision is the decision of the Financial Regulatory Authority 108 that is imposing obligation on all non-banking financial institutions to report on ESG performance. فكمان بقى في regulatory move. And the COP comes as an accelerator for all of these movements. The next question is how, and this is what I call system building. We start with the client with system building, and the system building simply, which is now, we have our hero here, Mahmoud, who is working with many of the clients across different sectors in this issue. System building passes through these steps. Simply, we identify ESG diagnostic review. We enter into a company. We have an ESG criteria, our map. We evaluate the company on. Then we do the benchmarking. We have a gap analysis. We establish a strategy for the company to work on its ESG performance. Then we establish committees and departments, capacity building, and then we start the implementation and alignment with the framework, and then we end by monitoring and reporting. Tell you about something about the Egyptian market. All the world work this way. Egyptian market don't work this way. Egyptian market starts from here. Starts from monitoring and it considers monitoring and reporting as the first 4 steps. Why? Because starting with monitoring and reporting means that you will do a diagnostic review, and definitely you will do a benchmarking and gap analysis. So we have a baseline report that can enhance the process of strategy setting. This is an example of the issues that we have. How we drive this list of issues when we go to any company, this is something Mahmoud is going to talk about, and this is his core working. This is the framework that Mahmoud is working with in order to be able to enhance, to identify the ESG issues across different companies. And the mother of all of these frameworks is called the GRI framework, the Global Reporting Initiative framework. This is an exercise that has just been delivered to the World Cement Association last week in Dubai. Risks. And I'm urging AUC to start working on the TCFD report. This is the TCFD report for example of TCFD report on the cement industry. And I would like to bring you just one insight. What is this? Currently, we do know that the businessmen understand only opportunities, compliance, and risks. This exercise helps you in doing the following. in internalizing externalities, in identifying the level of risk, the probability of occurrence, and how each and every risk will impact all of your financial statements, cash flow, balance sheet, and income statement. Let's take an example on the cement industry, one item. Let's talk about that policy and legal risks. We knew from the BOR in Egypt that cement sector contribution to GHG emission is very high. What will happen if the Egyptian government imposed a cap on the cement industry? Tab number one, is this possible? Policy and regulation. Is this possible? It's medium. الامباكت بتاعها هيبقى high ولا low؟ هيبقى very high. طب الامباكت بتاعها high, it will impact البالانس شيت ولا الانكم ستيتمنت ولا الكاش فلو؟ It will impact the income statement, and it will impact the income statement very highly. This is something that is very important to take into consideration. And this is an exercise I'm urging even the School of Public Finance or the School of Finance and the School of Economics to start working on, because as we speak, there are more than 4,000 companies that are required by FRA to produce this report. And we don't have 3 experts in the Egyptian market to do it. With 4,000 experts, 4,000 reports needed. طيب. بس كمان there are بقى زي ما حضرتك قلت opportunities. Opportunities زي ايه؟ زي energy sources, resource efficiency. We also calculate this on the financial statements of the process. طيب. Finally, this is a very important development that has happened. Do you remember the IFRS, which was the framework that we use to measure profitability? The IFRS has changed now, has established the International Sustainability Standard Board, and the International Sustainability Standard Board is now imposing on you sustainability and climate change disclosures. After this lecture, we will all go home, okay? And this is how we will enjoy the rest of our evening. But you need to know what your impact is. 1 hour on Netflix emits 100 grams of CO2. 1 burger consumes 15,000 liter of water. And 1 sugar, 1 soft drink impact is this. And that's why we launched the following campaign at Decarbon. We wanted to go down to the root cause, and we launched the campaign that's called Carbon and Carbona Kitchen. We started by them sitting in the kitchen, and every week we produce one thing. The first week was popcorn. We tell you what is the GHG emissions of popcorn, what are the water consumption of popcorn, and what is the calories that exist there. I think I'm done. Bas 3 takeaways. Number 1, sustainability from my perspective and in my narrative is the way capitalism is trying to fix itself by itself. هتلحق ولا لا, I don't know. لكن this is how it goes. Second, sustainability transcends skills to knowledge. Third, sustainability transcends multidisciplinarity into interdisciplinarity and take care of something. Whenever you are going to put sustainability, I think most of the strategy background people here, culture eats strategy for breakfasts. Culture is important to work on besides the strategy. Thank you so much, and sorry for being so long on you, and I'm willing to take all the questions you have. Thank you so much. وانا هقعد. احنا عندنا عايز اعمل اكسرسايز محمود. لو سمحتوا لي, I want to introduce you your graduate Mahmoud. Mahmoud, you have the presentation here. And Mahmoud will show you how we do sustainability reports, which is one very important exercise. Any question until Mahmoud bring the presentation? I can receive one question. I want to ask a question أصلا, بس حضرتك ممكن.
حضرتك
Yes.
You talked about the education would be on the consumption side. طيب معنى كده ان ال NNS او ال net savings هتبقى worse than 3.8%.
مظبوط يا فندم.
كام بقى؟
هي كانت من 6 ل 11.5 يعني تقريبا هي كانت 5 يعني هنبقى نيجاتيف 2. هنبقى بدل 3 point something هنبقى approximately نيجاتيف 2. على فكره باي ذا واي احنا دلوقتي نيجاتيف 7. الاكسرسايز دوت I ended up لحد الثوره 2011. من ساعتها we are going down more فاحنا دلوقتي approximately نيجاتيف 7. حط بقى عليهم انه كمان هندخل الاديوكيشن زي ما انت قلت نيجاتيف يبقى احنا هنبقى نيجاتيف 10 ف we are not growing sustainably.
وده مع كل الصرف اللي احنا بنعمله على التعليم والاديوكيشن عموما
يس لانه هو المنطقي انه it's not about ان انت يبقى عندك education. هو انت عايز quality education and how do we measure quality education? The only proxy and I'm against this proxy but this is the only proxy we have is employment. صح؟ and employment is a very important proxy to quality education.
الemployment ما زادتش في الفترة اللي فاتت في construction projects بتحصل في البلد دي كلها؟
لا الemployment ما زادتش على مستوى كل ما التعليم بيزيد. يعني احنا كل ما بنinvest اكتر في الeducation in Egypt بان قدامنا على الكيرف ان الديجري اوف الانemployment مع كل higher level of education بتزيد. And this means that education does not lead to GDP growth rates.
Okay.
فهي مش على السيكتور هي على مستوى الدولة. And this is very true. لو حضرتك بصيت لها في الواقع كويس الناس اللي مش متعلمة are working more than الناس اللي متعلمة لأن هو مش متعلم كويس فهو اتزنق في منطقة وهو مش فاهم فيها يعني هي this is the dilemma. He has a PhD in physics and we don't have research laboratories مثلا. He has a PhD in physics and it's paper PhD without any impact and so on. Thank you. تفضلي. Yes, please. Can you now have the mic, please? Mahmoud, I'm sorry, I will leave you now.
Yeah, my question concerned during the COVID, on one side we talked about during COVID, normal investments kind of went down and that ESG investments kind of stayed up concerning sustainability. And I just know that at least back home there was quite a big change in that less money was put into sustainable projects because money was needed elsewhere to kind of overcome this crisis and kind of help out the people of the country. So I'm wondering in which sense investments were made there.
Inside your country, right?
Yeah.
Not outside.
Yeah.
Let me give you a very good. This is a very good notice. Investors and particularly private investors, the first thing they want and ask about is return on investment and resilience and risk appetite. صح? It was proven by many studies, including a very prominent Harvard School study, that ESG companies are performing better than the average in their stock exchange index by 1 to 1.5%. In Egypt, the Sustainability Office proved the same, that companies with higher ESG performance are outperforming their counterparties without any ESG performance. And this is logic. Because with ESG, you are seeing more risks, صح ولا غلط, and you are factoring them into the decision-making process. A final question I will ask you very quickly and leave the floor to Mahmoud. COVID is a social risk. صح كده, it's an S, مش كده? For companies who was able to govern the risk because they are aware and acquainted with this, definitely for investor appetite, they were better. Thank you, Mahmoud.
So, good afternoon. I'm Mahmoud Amr, a Senior Sustainability Associate at Decarbon Egypt. I'm an AUC alumni, class of 2019, major political science with double concentrations in international law and international relations, and the history minor. I've been working at Decarbon for the past 3 years, and we've worked with numerous sectors to try to implement Dr. Ihab's vision and the government's vision into taking Egypt through the sustainability track. I think we have like 10 minutes for the presentation. Yeah, I'll try to go as fast as I could. So we're supposed to discuss sustainability reporting, the benefits of the reporting, and then focus on the GRI framework because it's the most widely used framework for sustainability. I'll quickly go through the principles of GRI reporting and the cornerstones of a GRI report. So sustainability reporting, as Dr. Ihab mentioned, is the way Egypt starts. And all the countries, as Dr. Ihab mentioned, set a target and then they monitor the targets and they set a strategy to fix their shortcomings. But in Egypt, we have it the opposite way around. We work with our clients in all the sectors, including telecommunications, healthcare, oil and gas, construction. We work with them to report on their current status and help them put a strategy for the future to improve what we discover through our reporting journey. So sustainability reporting is basically reporting on your ESG impacts, the environmental, social, and governance. Dr. Ihab went through that slide of why do institutions report on their ESG impacts, including investments mainly, reputational crisis that they need to fix, borrowing, peer pressure, so multiple clients begin to report on their progress because their peers in the market did it. Of course, branding, even AUC does it, like having and I'm very proud that we have our sustainability report. And it used to be voluntary compliance, but currently it's becoming obligatory. The government is putting obligations on institutions that are listed in the stock market, the stock exchange, to report on their ESG performance. It's moving away from voluntary to obligatory, compulsory, to attract investments and for leadership. What else? Yeah, a point that I need to elaborate on is mitigating the risks. Through discovering the ESG impacts, we discovered that company X faces numerous risks that it needs to work on and set a strategy to avoid that risks bringing it into a halt. Like a negative, if a company X has huge negative environmental impacts, it could be ordered to stop its production. So reporting on that helps it fixes its shortcomings, increased understanding of risks and opportunities, setting a strategy. These are the main benefits of reporting. Okay, so the GRI is the main framework widely used for reporting, and the GRI is the Global Reporting Initiative. It's an American company, but has its headquarters in the Netherlands. It's been there since 1997, and it's now the most widely used institution. These are some figures about the GRI. 75% of the largest 250 companies in the world report using the GRI frameworks. 40 organizations from 68 countries are active in GRI Gold Community, including Decarbon Egypt. We're one of the Gold Community members. 100 training partners across 57 countries. So far, I think the figure now changed. More than 46,000 reports have been published using the GRI framework, and 22 of the Bloomberg 50 companies use the GRI report. These are the countries. That's a map of the world referencing GRI. List of stock exchanges that reference GRI. International institutions referencing GRI. Okay, I'll go quickly because that's a detailed thing, but the GRI mainly asks institutions to report on general disclosures, like introducing the reader to an organizational profile about the company, the lines of businesses, the countries they export to, the amount of materials used, the number of employees, a generic organizational profile, and then they ask them to report on a set of KPIs, key performance indicators, on their economic, social, and governance performance. These are the books that have the disclosures and the KPIs that the GRI set for institutions to follow and guide them through their sustainability journey. We have the economic topics, the environmental topics, and the social topics. And these books are all available online if anyone wants to check them. So these are the steps that we go through with our clients to publish a report. So we prepare with them. First we discuss, we provide them with a list of disclosures and KPIs that they need to fill. Most probably, unfortunately, the level of maturity in Egypt is very low. Clients are unaware of what.
I would love to ask this question. How did you find companies replying or when you are telling them you have to report about different sectors in the company? This was what one of the questions after.
Yeah, I think we could, and I could skip the presentation for a bit and we could talk on practical grounds, the actual issues. Of course, there are resistance, huge resistance. I think most companies are afraid to be transparent, and they think that if you publish a lot about your company or if you get the details out in public, it might cause issues. Well, actually, that's not the case. Transparency is one thing, and being afraid to mention what you have out in the public. But I think there is another issue, is the inability to understand what's needed. Like there's no maturity. No one is aware of what is ESG, what are the disclosures that you're asking. The points that I mentioned, the number of employees, the input materials used, the name of the organization, location of headquarters, these are generic things that any employee in any company could fill. But the thing is, the level of details the GRI requires is much more detailed than that. Like for example, they ask you about the GHG emissions for transportation. Like if you import one of the key inputs to your materials, what are the GHG emissions since the input part leaves its mother company or its the location of origin until it reaches your company. The clients in general, or the market in general, is unaware of the importance of having that data, and it's not ready. And they don't have it. It's already, aside from not willing to disclose it, but it's not available. And it's a worldwide thing. The issue is not in Egypt only. I've read a lot about sustainability in different countries, and it's everywhere. The lack of data and the lack of knowledge is a worldwide issue. And that's why GRI is preparing a set of seminars, and we have like that event to introduce the people the importance of sustainability reporting, and worldwide that's happening. It's not only an issue in Egypt.
Report. And for the other thing about the data collection, and I think this is a very important point about the data and how people need to have a data. And this is, I'm not talking about because I'm the AUC, but it's one of the most important thing that we have at AUC. And when the COPs came and when the climate change has been on the table and everything is there, and we have been publishing our carbon footprint report and the carbon emissions from now we have the 6th report, and now we have a data for about like more than 10 years of energy consumption, water, and waste, transportation emissions. When you come to mitigate or try to find ways to know where is the trends of the carbon emission, I was talking about this in the morning, you can know how can you put for yourself a roadmap in order to reduce.
You can't manage what you can't measure.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
That's true, and that's one of the shortcomings and one of the issues that we have when collecting data. The thing is, even if they want to disclose it, it's unavailable. They don't have it ready. So that takes us into a journey with the client on preparing, on digging with them, and it's a good thing that we have all our clients' trust. We go into the departments and we help them prepare and dig for the data, because sometimes an institution can have great ESG impacts, but they are unaware that what they do is very important. For example, most of our clients have a CSV department or a CSR, a corporate social responsibility department, and that department invests or spends millions of Egyptian pounds helping people in multiple areas, especially the local community surrounding whichever plant we're working with, and they're unaware that that is a positive impact. If they had, sometimes you ask them for the number of beneficiaries of of Initiative X, or the number of meals distributed, that data sometimes is not ready. When we find the data, it proves how an impact is very positive. So yeah, it's an issue, but we're working. It's an issue, but it's an issue worldwide. It's not just here. I need to stress that.
Do you have any advices for students here who want to join this, to what they should work on and how should you work it in?
If they want to join the sustainability field, they must be willing to read a lot, because every day we have updates. Yani, you don't do your research once and for all. You need to be, because every new day there is a new trend out there. So you need to be willing to read a lot, research a lot, be aware of the global, local, regional issues.
How many sectors you worked on?
I worked on the oil and gas, the telecommunications, healthcare, banking, in 3 years, among others. These are the ones that I remember now.
في واحد ما خلصش لسه دلوقتي اللي هو
Oh yeah, and the construction sector, heavy industry. Yeah, and fertilizers, construction materials, petrochemicals. Yeah, I can't remember all that,
But you didn't work with higher education institutions before.
No.
You didn't work with
No,
it.
because I think AEC is the only higher institution education and
Yes.
education facility that published its GRI report, its sustainability
Sustainability report.
Other than that, I don't think other universities have
Yes.
been doing, nor schools. But I think people are becoming more mature and aware. Like the scene is changing. People are becoming aware of the importance to report on the ESG impact.
The floor is open for any questions. If you want to have a question, I think Mahmoud, you finished your presentation.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's.
Yes,
it's
we have a
better.
question here.
I'm sorry.
Just to understand something, do you help with the data collection in each of the industries that you were just telling us about, or you just introduce the idea of GRI or reporting and so forth, and then each institution shall work on its own on how to, so because I don't
Yeah,
understand the
I'll
role.
Can you show her the next slide?
Yeah.
You need to go to this.
Okay, Tabir, I want to answer your question. Like we do, we have a journey with the client, starting with training them on the disclosures, and we go usually 2 to 3 days, full day training with our clients, explaining the GRI framework and going into details of the list of the economic, social, and governmental, economic, social, and governance disclosures and the general disclosures. Then we help and we aid a lot in collecting the data to the extent that we leave our offices and go to the client's offices to help in collecting the data. Because as I said, the workforce or the employees at certain companies, they are unaware of the data that they have. Yani, GRI might ask about a certain question and they have that information, but they don't disclose it because they're unaware that that fulfills question X. So yes, we do help with them a lot throughout the journey. And the report usually takes 6 months. And throughout these 6 months, we'll continuously and Dr. Hef specifically, he's always with the clients and willing to go extra miles to satisfy them and to ensure that the sustainability report covers all what's needed and what's recommended by the GRI.
We have 5 minutes. If anyone have a question, you can.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say thank you for the presentation. Obviously, thank you, Dr. Eb. It's always a pleasure being part of your audience. I actually have 3 questions, so feel free to choose any of them and answer them. The first one, with the education case in Egypt that was seen as a consumption, it kind of has an underlying hypothesis that employment is the only yield that we're looking for, even though, for example, higher levels of education were associated with less crime rates, and thus crime rates kind of yields in a better economic situation. So I see it more of an investment than a consumption, so it wouldn't look as if it's a negative aspect. So I just want to understand if I got that correctly. The second one is the ESG investment growth versus traditional when COVID happened. What I've seen is that the investments have increased, if I understood the chart correctly, but not the resilience of these investments have sustained. So obviously, because there is a social and health crisis, more investment will go to these aspects. But the chart would make more sense about the ESG resilience if it showed that the investments that were done pre-COVID have sustained more post-COVID. And the last one is the ESG model with S&P 500, the case that happened with Tesla being dropped out and ExxonMobil being in top 10. So that was very interesting. So I'd love a reflection on that.
Agree with you.
Thank you.
And McDonald's. Type. First question. Let me return your question with a question. Which is more correlated, education and crime rates, or unemployment and crime rates? Generally, which from your perspective is more correlated, education and crime rates, or unemployment and crime rates? Yes.
We're actually illiterate, we're the least unemployed. So
Excellent.
I think the correlation doesn't imply causation.
Now, and that's why this is an answer. Let me bring it simply. Definitely, the level of unemployment is more correlated to the level of crime rate. In particular, financial crimes. If we are talking about the most common type of crime, which is financial crimes. Financial crimes are more or less correlated to unemployment rather than to education. Simple notion, yeah. And that's why with more unemployment, we are expecting more crime rates. Yet, I'm with you. But we don't have more proxies to utilize. Yani, whenever we go to a proxy, this means that there is no clear KPI that we can consider as the major KPI. So our proxy here was employment, because our target was GDP. صح كده؟ If you remember the circular flow, when as a household, I either consume or invest. صح ولا غلط؟ I want to place education in one of the two tracks, either in investment or in consumption. Normally, we place it in investment, as a human investment. But it turns out to be without impact on the GDP. So probably it goes as consumption rather than investments. This is a very narrow view to the issue, and I agree with you from your view. Your second question was related to greenwashing, Tesla, McDonald's, and the likes, huh?
I mean, that was the third one. The second one was kind of, you displayed the ESG investment versus the traditional investment.
Yes.
But what was shown on the graph was the increase of the companies or organizations that got ESG investments, not the resilience of pre-COVID ESG investments versus post-COVID.
The same يعني it's a cause and effect, meaning before COVID ESG investing was increasing and traditional investing was increasing, right? After COVID ESG investing continue increasing while traditional investing went down, correct? What does this say in general? In ESG investing is more of a shock absorber, and no. In particular in the coming days, meaning in the coming days we are expecting more disruptors. The coming 10 years are called the eras of disruption. I want to be securing a resilient source of investment. Who proved to be more resilient during COVID? It's ESG investing. You got it?
I mean, I would understand it more if the graph showed that companies or organizations that took ESG investments were able to sustain and be more resilient because of the type of reporting that they did. However, if I look at the graph as it is...
Not only reporting. It's not about the reporting. The reporting is the final thing.
Yeah,
It's the proof.
Yes.
Because of the type of the business model they are adopting. You got me, Hannah?
Yes.
It's the business model that made them more resilient. Again, companies that ESG investing is increasing in general, and surprisingly, it's more of shock absorbent. And this was clear for us. The third question concerning greenwashing, I'm in agreement with you. Greenwashing is a normal phenomenon at particular levels. As Mahmoud mentioned من شوية بيقول إيه, and this is my way in doing things, particularly in Egypt. When I came from Germany, I made a list with all of my potential clients, and I made the list with the never potential clients. After 1 year, what happened for me is that I removed the word never and put it on the other list. And this was exactly what happened to me. And then I said two things, either to go back again or to start understanding the national context. Whenever you find an immature kid, don't try to make him jump in a Ferrari. I'm always telling this even for multilateral development banks, and if you are insisting on the Ferrari, okay, he will have it down home and he will not drive it. Let's start by a Toyota. Get him acquainted, take his hand. You are doing good in so and so and so, and you are doing bad in so. Let's this year work on those. And then he asked me, will we report on the other bad things? Although it's your right to keep them confidential. خلاص? Let's work on 3 out of the 4. Report on 3 bad things out of the 4, and have a management approach for them the next year, working on them. So it's a journey that we need to work with the clients, take him in the general steps in order to make a movement. This is something that needs to be, and this is the difference between having a on-shelf structure and having the local and national contexts understanding of the file. But definitely greenwashing is everywhere. I think you have heard about much banks in the last period also that has went with greenwashing cases and so on. Please.
That everything is about the narrative and how things are framed. And now at the end you had the quote which said, "A culture eats strategy for breakfast." And I was wondering how you personally see how the narrative can be changed in Egypt, and thus also the culture, to a more sustainable lifestyle.
Your question have several angles to address it from, but I will address it from the most angle that is very clear for you, which is the German perspective, okay? I've just returned from the United Arab Emirates, okay? And from the media, I went there having the impression that the United Arab Emirates is a signatory of the net zero. Can you imagine? It's the whole country. It's not the DUC. It's the whole country signatory to the net zero. Can you imagine what I was expecting there? Tell you something very strange. I found there practice and practical on ground. Egypt is adopting sustainability and climate change more rigorously than the United Arab Emirates. They were very good in addressing it as a PR and media issue. On ground, no practices. Country that is dependent on oil. This is very logical in this respect. Bringing back here, we are working in decarbon on 4 levels. Okay, I'm working on a level that is more important than the 4 levels, and this is where I can see us very positioned. We are working on the global level with international organizations. We are working with multilateral development institutions, banks. We are working on the regional level, the League of Arab States and their family, and the EBRD and the like. And we are working with the national government and working with corporates. Can you see these 4 levels? We are also working cross-sectoral, okay? We are addressing the files economically, socially, politically, and can you see this mixture? This is the only way you can effect and impact real change in sustainability on ground. What was the level that was missing from my side? It was the human being, it was the person, it was the culture. And that's why I started by feeling this, and I started by Carbon and Carbona. I want Carbon and Carbona to bring the whole family in the kitchen, which is something we all do, okay? And then I'm going to go with them out in the society, doing activities, seeing others and so on. Because without cultural change, you will always file the file motivated by different interests. And that's why I put the movie Don't Look Up. You must see this movie. It will summarize the issue for you very much simply. Everybody has his own interests and everybody has his own motivation. You need to do 2 things together. One, let them align with their motivations, like we did with the business sector. Why you want ESG, finance, leadership, and the like? For align with the motivation. This is phase 1, and phase 2, implement the cultural change. And let me say what your question is very important. For example, with all our clients, like Mahmoud is saying. In the first meeting we address with all of our clients, you cannot imagine the resistance level that we face in the first hour of the induction. Everybody on the board of directors is sitting literally as if time is killing them out. We learned out of this process. What is the first thing when they see they change? When their competitors did it. We spend something like 1 hour, say, talking about the issue, and everybody is... And then when we went to the competitor slide, they start telling us, can you please repeat from the beginning? And this is how we should understand. This is the local context. This is the understanding of the cultural issue.
If anyone have a question about
Yes,
the
please.
AUC as well.
Of a business should a business start doing GRI reporting? So are we talking like something in the stock market or something like small businesses here?
Okay.
Stores.
For small and medium-sized enterprises, the cost of doing the report is huge in relation to the company. Okay. But I'm encouraging doing this internally very much. You can have a training, an online training even, with the GRI themselves, something that will cost you something like $300 or $400, and you can do the report yourself, starting from the micro enterprise. Why? Because this is what, if you want your company to grow and flourish, not to wait and then insert sustainability as a concept, this is the best way to do it. If you are small and medium-sized enterprise, also there are digital tools online, and it's for free in many cases. You can utilize these digital tools in generating your reports.
Thank you.
Most welcome.
We are still open to questions, and if there's
And
a question...
if there is questions about the COP also,
and
if
it
anybody
links-
wants to ask about the COP27,
yes.
we are more than willing to hear you. Adam.
I have a small question regarding the people who will be participating in the COP, especially the students from the universities. What would you advise them on preparing or planning or even presenting to the COP exactly? Because in this COP, we are planning on really having a real-life impact. So what would your professional advice be exactly?
I think Dr. Hisham will be better than me in addressing this question.
You're asking a very critical question, of course. But you know that there is some entities have to be submitted in the COP by it registered in UNFCCC. It's around 404 NGO and also around 850 for other entities. It looks like a diplomatic entity. So if anyone wants to go to the COP, he has to be registered with one of this entity, but unfortunately, Egypt has one entity. Of course, yes, the UNFCCC Secretariat gives the Egypt an exception for 15 NGO until now, but they don't know how they go to the COP with events, side events, for example. They didn't know until there is no plan. But if you want to register, you have to be member in one of these 400 entities in all over the world, or you can contact with RAID. It's NGO, Egyptian NGO, under supervision Dr. Imad Adli. He is the only one has the right to register in the COP.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I think we took from you like more than 2 hours. Thank you very much, Dr. Ihab. Thank you very much, Dr. Hisham Isa. Thank you for the very informative session and giving us like a brief about the world outside AUC and outside the educational or higher education industry and the economic part. Thank you very much, and thank you for the attendees, and inshallah for extra.
VP Shireen wants to
Oh, okay.
We really want to thank you. This was very, very, very informative. Very, really, and much more than I personally expected. And the contribution of the students was amazing. So we look forward to having you more and to seeing you soon next month, inshallah. Thank you so much. Merci Yasmin. Thank you.
لا